Over the past couple of seasons, I don't think there is a single team in the NFL that has fallen short expectations more than the Cincinnati Bengals. This is a team that should be contending year in and year out with a future Hall of Fame quarterback and wide receiver duo, and yet they went 6-11 in 2025 and were one of the most disappointing teams in the NFL. But this is a Bengals team that I think might be one of the most improved teams in the NFL in both free agency and the draft. I think Cincinnati did a fantastic job of filling out needs on this roster. And in today's video, we're going to talk about the moves that they made and if they are enough to get them back into the playoffs and potentially into contention. I'm really excited about this one. This is one of my favorite teams to talk about because they've got my favorite player in the NFL in Joe Burrow. So I'm excited about this one, but if you guys do enjoy the content, be sure to hit that like button. A football animation will appear. Really helps get this video out to more Bengals fans like yourselves. And comment down below if you think I'm too high or too low on this team. But let's go ahead, let's kick this off, and let's talk about Zac Taylor, the ever controversial head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Zac Taylor's a really interesting coach. I think obviously he came here, got Joe Burrow, they make the Super Bowl, and things were looking really good, but it feels like we have kind of reached the ceiling of what Zac Taylor is going to be able to provide as a head coach. I think he runs a very quarterback-friendly offense. This is a team that is going to play primarily 11 personnel. They are going to rank towards the bottom of the league in terms of 12 personnel, but this is a Bengals team that was ninth in the NFL at 11 personnel, playing about 65% of their snaps there. It's going to be a lot of pre-snap motion, quick rhythm throws, those layered passes, some easy play action stuff. And that's fine. Like, I think he has done a really good job of creating advantages for the quarterbacks and for the wide receivers. I think if there's an area that you might worry about with him, the run game hasn't been super dynamic, and you can argue about the run blocking, but I don't think he's done a great job scheming up this elite run game. Look, I'm going to make this short on Zac Taylor. If this team misses the playoffs again, Zac Taylor will be out of a job, I think, without a question. And honestly, I was surprised that they decided to bring him back with how poorly the last couple of years have gone. But they clearly still believe in him. And I think for what he's been able to get out of this offense, you feel pretty good about what he can do. But can he hire the right defensive coordinator? And can he kind of get this team back on track? That's going to be, we'll have to wait and see how that's going to go. But as for the offensive coordinator, the primary offensive play caller is Zac Taylor. Dan Pitcher is the offensive coordinator by name. He's here. He is a guy that's kind of come up with this team. Potentially, if things go well, he could get poached, but we saw what happened the last time a Bengals offensive coordinator got hired in Brian Callahan. So I feel like that they're pretty good. Zac Taylor is the head coach, but the fascinating one is going to be defensive coordinator Al Golden, who is a very interesting defensive coordinator. He came over last year to replace Lou Anarumo, and this is a team that's going to play a lot of man coverage. They play a lot of cover one, traditional 4-3 base. They're going to play with some nickel, but this is a team that's going to attack, have positionless linebackers in space, and they're going to play a ton of man coverage. And there were some ups and downs, I would say, with what this team was able to do, but they were pretty poor on the defensive side of the ball. They ranked 29th in defensive DVOA. They were pretty awful against the run. They were pretty awful against the pass, 29th against the pass, 29th against the run. It just was not a good year defensively. Now, you can point to injuries, the lack of personnel, and I think all of that is true. But Al Golden, coming from the defensive, from the college ranks, I should say, there are still a lot of unseen areas. We haven't really seen him coach in the NFL. Obviously, he came from Notre Dame as their defensive coordinator for a couple of years. And in his first year in the NFL, it wasn't necessarily the prettiest. And yes, he's got experience as a head coach, Coach Temple in Miami, but he's still a question mark. And that's going to be a big thing to kind of wait and see what the Bengals can do. Of the teams in the top 15 of the league right now, and I think that the Bengals are, I would argue this is probably the weakest coaching staff. There are a lot of question marks at head coach, at defensive coordinator, and it's going to make this a really big wild card for this team. But let's talk about this offense, because there's a lot to really talk about and really love about what this Bengals team is doing. And I think a lot of people kind of underrate the changes that this offense has gone through, particularly on the offensive line, which we'll talk about. But it's Joe Burrow. We'll start with Joe Burrow, who I mentioned in the intro. Joe Burrow is one of my favorite players in the league. The injuries are starting to add up, and it feels like every other year at this point, he's missing an extended amount of time. 2023, he threw just 365 passes on the year, and then he had the wrist injury. 2024 was one of the best quarterback seasons we've seen in the last decade. Then he gets hurt in 2025, where he plays the first 2 weeks of the season, and then he comes back week 13. Look, when Joe Burrow's healthy, you can argue he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I think from an accuracy standpoint, this is a guy that just doesn't miss throws. His adjusted completion percentage over his career is around 78%. His big-time throw percentage is around 5%. He doesn't throw the ball in harm's way. He takes care of the football. He is got incredible pocket presence, which we talk a lot about how bad the offensive line has been, but the way he's able to evade pressure, I think, has been awesome, and he's been fantastic in that phase. He just throws his receivers open. He might not have this Justin Herbert level arm, but he's got a really, really good arm. He takes care of the football, and look, there's not really any negative thing to say about Joe Burrow other than he has to stay on the field. He has to stay healthy, because when he's healthy, this offense is one of the most unstoppable offenses in the NFL. They are absolutely unstoppable. So this is going to be a huge year for Joe Burrow and this Bengals offense. I'm not saying that if they fall short, I know a lot of Bengals fans are worried about a trade request, and I'm not predicting that. I think he loves being in Cincinnati, but one, he's got to stay healthy, and two, this team does have to win. And if he can stay on the field, I think that this team can win a lot of football games. But let's talk about the backups really quickly. Joe Flacco came in here last year, played valiantly. I'm not a big Joe Flacco guy. He's also incredibly old, and I don't think expecting him to really play all that well is realistic. He started off hot for this team, looked great against Green Bay and Pittsburgh and then the Jets, and then really after that Chicago game where he threw for almost 500 yards, it kind of went down the hill. He's going to be 42 years old in January. This is, if I had to guess, his final season. They bring in Josh Johnson as well, who's a career backup. But yeah, if Joe Burrow goes down, Joe Flacco might be able to give you some valiant performances here, but your season is probably over. The run game here actually graded out pretty well last year, which was a little bit of a surprise because Chase Brown has been a good running back here, had over 1,000 yards last season. I didn't feel like he was as spectacular as I was expecting, but the Bengals were 6th in offensive rushing DVOA, which is really impressive. Chase Brown is a really solid running back. He's not going to give you, I don't think, this monster season or anything like that. Like, he's a patient runner. He's pretty good after contact. He averages a little over 3 yards after contact per attempt. I think he's really shifty. I think that he can make plays as a receiver, where he had 437 receiving yards on 69 receptions last year. He's good after contact. He's shifty. I think he's got good vision, but I just don't think he's a spectacular athlete. He's 5'9". He's not the biggest guy in the world. So I do think he's kind of capped out athletically for what he can be. But for a 5th round pick, this has been a huge hit for this Bengals front office. And I think Chase Brown has done a pretty good job kind of elevating himself as the number 1 running back. You still have Samaje Perine here, who is kind of the 3rd down back here. He has been really good in that role. Not a very good athlete. He's a powerful runner. Had a pretty good year after contact in 2025 coming back to Cincinnati. He's going to be a good receiving back, a good blocking back for you. He'll do some of the 3rd down work. And then they've got some interesting kind of developmental backups here. Taj Brooks saw the field very little in 2025. I liked him coming out of Texas Tech, but he had just 16 carries on his rookie season for 45 yards. He's not a very good athlete. He is going to get caught from behind because he just lacks the speed. But I love the power profile at 230 pounds and think he could develop into a really good short yardage goal line back. And then Jamal Haynes, an undrafted pickup from Georgia Tech, is in a very similar kind of ballpark as a guy that I think has some power and pretty solid vision. So look, I don't think this run game is holding this team back. I think they probably would rank, 21st best running back room in the league, but I don't think it really matters all that much. This is a team that wants to pass the ball primarily, and I think Chase Brown does enough work as that lead back to kind of keep them afloat, and he's had a really good couple of years. But let's talk about this receiving duo, or trio, I should say, because I think Andrei Iosivas gets kind of forgotten about. This is the best receiving room in the NFL. I don't really think it's particularly close either. Jamarrchase has a legitimate argument to be the best receiver in football. I think he's probably 3 on that list. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, Jamarrchase, Puka Nacua, all 3 of those guys are interchangeable to me, but Jamarrchase is the full package as a receiver. He's had over 1,000 yards the first 5 seasons of his career. He has been an absolute godsend for this team. And in 2025, had 1,400 yards, 8 touchdowns. I think you saw the production dip a little bit because he wasn't playing with Joe Burrow. And when you saw him with Joe Burrow, the numbers really started to come up. Joe Flacco just was not able to get him the ball as consistently, I don't think. But I mean, after the catch, I think Jamarrchase is awesome. He's got some of the best speed in the NFL. He's creative, can make guys miss in the open field. He has the speed to challenge vertically. He's got really, really good hands. Had an under 5% drop rate this year. Throughout his career, he's been at about 6%. His contested catch numbers came up in 2025, winning 55% of his contested catch targets. He's one of the best route runners and separators, can challenge to all 3 levels of the field. I mean, there's not really a bad thing to say about Jamarrchase. He is an absolutely amazing football player. He checks every box that you want, and he has a legitimate case to be the best receiver in the NFL. When you have that guy paired with a top 5 quarterback at the worst, you should be able to win a lot of football games. And when they've been healthy together, we have seen that. But I think T. Higgins, he kind of falls into the Joe Burrow conversation. T. Higgins has got to stay healthy. He was healthy in 2024 for the most part, looked really good. And this year, he was mostly healthy. He missed a couple of games here and there, had 11 touchdowns, 846 yards. Another just awesome player. He's a bigger, true X receiver for this team that is going to play a majority of his snaps out wide. He played 87% of his snaps as a true boundary receiver. But he's got physicality, winning about 47% of his contested catches. He's a solid route runner, but has absolutely amazing hands, catches everything, really good body control. And when he's on the field, you've got those 2 guys and the skill sets that they bring. It's so important in the NFL to have complementary skill sets. And Jamarrchase with his speed and T. Higgins with his physicality, and he's not lacking in speed either. I think you've got a awesome duo of pass catchers that make this team truly, truly special. And then in terms of depth, I think after those guys, it's good. I think you would like to see a little bit more. Andrei Iosivas has been a fine third banana here in this group, has 435 yards this year. I think the big thing with him is going to be drops. This guy has a 12% drop rate over his career for a 6'3" receiver. He's not been the most physical, but I think he's another guy that he can kind of work the middle of the field. He's not going to do a ton of work there as the third, fourth read for most of the time. I think he's a fine number 3 receiver. You've got Charlie Jones here, who is a guy that has done most of his work as a special teamer and is a fine player. He's not seen the field a lot as a true receiver, but as a special teamer, he's been really impressive. Mitch Tinsley, he came onto the scene here last year, really had a strong preseason and didn't do too much as in the regular season. He had just 116 yards and 8 receptions. But this is a guy that's got some really good size, physicality. I think there could be a world where he could develop into being a good X for this team, but I as a third or fourth guy. But He's here. This team drafted Colby Young in the 4th round, which I thought was an overdraft. There's not a lot of great depth in this receiving room. Luckily, Jamarrchase has been able to stay healthy for the most part. T. Higgins, you do worry about some of the health, but I think this is a good group of receivers. And then the tight end room. This is a really fascinating group of tight ends. This is a team that will primarily play in 11 personnel. You're not going to see them do a whole lot of 12 personnel. They are going to rank towards the bottom of the league in terms of that category. So I am really interested to see what they decide to do. Drew Sample is the quote-unquote number 1 tight end on this team. He has less than 1,000 receiving yards in 7 seasons in his career. He's 6'5". He's 255 pounds. Really good blocker. That's what he's going to bring to the table. As both a run blocker and pass blocker, I think he gives them some decent advantages. But if they want to go to more of a receiving type of guy, Mike Gesicki is here. He has been a better receiving tight end throughout his career. Over the last 2 years, he's got around 1,000 yards and 4 touchdowns for this team. I think he's probably the third read in this offense, and that's why Yoshivasu can live with some of his struggles. But Gesicki, good athlete. He's got some nice athleticism and has been a really reliable player for this team. The hands are really good. He's not, I wouldn't say, the biggest or most physical tight end in the world, but he can win contested catches. I like him if they want to go to more of a receiving option. And then they've got a few interesting kind of developmental guys. Eric All is fascinating. The Iowa tight end factory, it feels like. As a rookie, he really flashed as a good blocker. He had 158 yards on 20 receptions, was targeted 20 times. The guy's got strong hands, and he just missed all of 2025 with an injury. If he can get back healthy, he could definitely take that step to become the number 1 tight end. You've got Tanner Hudson here, and then Jack Injuries as a 7th round pick feels very much like Mike Gesicki insurance. Really good receiver, not the best athlete in terms of creating separation. He's a little bit stiff, but I was a big Jack Injuries fan. I thought it was a steal where they got him in the 7th round. It's a serviceable tight end room where you've got some blocking, you've got some receiving, and you've got some upside. And I think you should feel pretty good about that if you are the Bengals. And another thing I think you should feel better about than people are going to lead you to believe is this offensive line. I think a lot of people still think that these are the 2022 Bengals and that this offensive line is one of, if not the worst in the NFL, and that all of the issues that they have blocking-wise or with some of the losses are because they haven't been able to keep Joe Burrow healthy. And I just don't think that's the case. And I don't think there's really any metric to back up that claim. This offensive line has been pretty solid over the last few seasons. You've got Orlando Brown at left tackle, who is a good player in pass protection. 2025, he struggled, but the pass protection numbers, you're blocking for Joe Flacco for a majority of the season, who is a statue in the pocket. And a lot of his worst games came blocking for Joe Flacco. So I'm almost willing to give a pass on a career high 9 sacks allowed. He's got incredible grip strength. He's got a really big, strong upper body. He will get penalized, and he's not a very good run blocker at 345 pounds. It's just hard for him to get out in space and create a lot of leverage. But he is a fine, serviceable starting left tackle. I think you feel pretty good about that. You've got Dylan Fairchild entering year 2 at the left guard spot. Dylan Fairchild had some moments, some up and down moments, but he started every game for this team last year, except I think he missed a couple around the week 6 range. Was pretty good for a rookie guard. He allowed 31 pressures, 2 sacks on the season, but showed some flashes as a run blocker, showed some flashes in pass protection. I was not a very big Dylan Fairchild fan coming out of the draft, and I thought he played pretty well for this team. So right out the gate, you've got 2 guys that I think Fairchild's got the arrow pointing up. Orlando Brown, I think, can bounce back after what was, like I said, a career high. I think the question is going to be Ted Karras. Ted Karras has been here for the last 4 years, been a really good pass protecting center. Doesn't really take a lot of losses. He's, again, got a pretty strong upper body, 310 pounds, built low to the ground. He did struggle at times in run blocking. He's never really been this awesome run blocker, but I don't think he's a liability in that phase. And I think he can hold his own in pass protection. And He's another guy. He'll be 34 years old in March. If I had to guess, this is probably his last season here, but that's a decent starting center. You have Dalton Risner at right guard, another guy that kind of came in here last year and played really good football for this team. Dalton Risner was awesome for this team. He didn't start to begin the season. He didn't really start games consistently until week 12. But from week 12 on, this was a guy that was really stable in pass protection. He allowed just 2 sacks on the year. He's a good run blocker. He's been that player really throughout his entire career. He's been just a good guard. I don't think he's got the craziest high ceiling. He's 31 years old, but I don't think he brings a low floor to the table either. And we've kind of gone through the 4 starters, and like, is there anything that's like talking about this being like one of the best offensive lines? No, there's a lot of questions, mostly age-related questions, but Amarius Mims is one of the most fascinating players in the NFL this year. Mims in year 2 was really solid. He allowed 35 pressures, 4 sacks, got a lot better as that run blocker. Coming out of Georgia, it was always going to be a 2 or 3 year project with Amarius Mims. He is 6'7", he's 340 pounds. He's a guy that was really young, didn't have a lot of tackle experience coming out, and he was going to take a little bit to get adjusted to the NFL speed. And I thought year 2, he really started to finish strong. From week 12 against the Patriots to the rest of the season, this is a guy that didn't allow a single sack throughout that stretch of the year. He didn't have a penalty throughout that stretch, was really good in pass protection. You really started to see him take strides as a run blocker. I'm all in on Amarius Mims. I loved him as a tackle prospect, and I think he's got a real chance to develop into being a really, really good right tackle, one of the best right tackles in the league. In terms of offensive line depth that maybe this team may have to go to and probably will have to go to, it's not awesome. Cody Ford is here. He's been here for the last few seasons as kind of a swing tackle. He's not a very good player. You definitely don't want to have to see him. You've got Andrew Coker as probably the other option in terms of like a swing tackle. He was an undrafted pickup out of TCU a couple of years ago who has not played a single snap in the league. And they've got a couple like Javon Foster. I liked coming out of Missouri. I just don't think there's much upside. The interior depth is fascinating, though. Jalen Rivers is entering year 2. I think that this is a player that if you do have an injury, he would be able to kick outside and play a little bit of tackle for you. He's 325 pounds. He started a little bit at right guard for this team last year. It was ugly for him in pass protection, and it's why they ultimately ended up going with Dalton Risner. But he's going to be 24 years old in September, 5th round pick. But I loved the 2 draft picks they made on day 3 of this draft. Connor Lew was my number 1 center in this draft class. I had a top 100 grade on him. I don't expect him to see the field a lot this year recovering from that ACL tear. But if he can get back to where he was playing, I think he could be an all-pro level center. And then Brian Parker played tackle at Duke, but I think he is going to be a really good backup guard. They've got some really interesting young offensive linemen, and I think it helps elevate the floor of this offense. Outside of the coaching, there's not a lot of question marks that I have around this offense. Yes, the offensive line is probably middling, but it's not one of the worst units in the league, and I think that this is going to be a really solid group. So let's shift over to the defense, which I think, like I said in the intro, there might not have been a unit that improved more this year than the Cincinnati Bengals defensive line. They added 3 legitimate stars, and maybe 4 if we're counting rookies here, that I think are going to elevate the floor of this team significantly. And the big splash move that this team went out and made was making the blockbuster trade for Dexter Lawrence. And Dexter Lawrence, to me, has a strong case to be one of the best defensive tackles in the league. You could argue that, Chris Jones, Jeffrey Simmons, there's some really good players, but not many of those guys are 6'4", 342 pounds and impact the run in the same way that Dexter Lawrence does. Dexter Lawrence is an absolute animal. There's so much to love about what he can do. Like I mentioned, he's 340 pounds. This is a guy that is going to just take up space in the middle of the defense. I think nose tackles, they don't really get a lot of love on PFF for the grades because of the position they play and just the responsibilities. He's one of the best run defending defensive tackles in football. On top of that, this is a guy that tackles well, and he's able to create pressure consistently. Now, the pressure rate did come down for him in 2024, or in 2025, I should say. He had just a 6% pressure rate, just a half sack on the season as compared to 9 sacks in 2024. So the sack production has come down, but this is a guy that was double teamed on like most of his snaps last year. This is a guy that is consistently double teamed as a pass rusher. He's a guy that can play 3-tech, can play nose. He's an awesome run defender, and he gives you some incredible wins as a pass rusher. There's so much to love about Dexter Lawrence. Like I said, I think there's a strong case to be made that he's the best defensive tackle in the league, and you just add that guy for the number 10 overall pick in the draft, which, look, it wasn't the strongest draft. I make that trade 100 times out of 100 if I'm the Bengals. And even in a down year, Dexter Lawrence still had 34 pressures. He still was effective against the run. He had a career best in terms of missed tackle percentage, and he's a really, really good player. So I absolutely love this trade for this team. And I think that immediately just changes the interior of this defense. But it's a lot better than that. Like, there are some really fun moves that this team made. They bring in Jonathan Allen. We'll just kind of finish up the interior additions they add. Jonathan Allen last year was in Minnesota, had a pretty decent season. I think over the last couple of years, there were signs that he might be regressing in Washington. I thought he had a fine season for the Vikings. He started a lot of games for this team. He's a guy to me that is more of a pass rushing type of guy. He's not this amazing run defender. He misses a lot of tackles. That's kind of been an area of concern. And he's 300 pounds, so he can get pushed off the ball. But you're adding an athletic kind of 3-tech that to pair next to Dexter Lawrence. Yeah, I really like that. Again, never really been the most efficient run defending defensive tackle, but I do like what he can provide as a pass rusher. In terms of other guys that they have on this interior, you still have BJ Hill here, who's kind of done a lot of the same things that you would be asking a Dexter Lawrence to do as like a nose tackle. Had 5 sacks last year. Good like third defensive tackle to have on this team. He's given them good production as a pass rusher. He's a pretty solid run defender and tackler as well. You like that. You still have you still have Chris Jenkins, I should say, on this team. That's really the only other guy that I think is worth, spending extended amount of time on. Chris Jenkins has been a pretty big disappointment for this team, has not defended the run very well. He's not gotten a lot of production as a pass rusher. Maybe now that you have another guy next to him with some size, there could be some development. And TJ Slayton's here. You draft Landon Robinson from Navy in the 7th round, who I think will take a couple of years. And then you still have Howard Cross. It's a good interior defensive line, but I think the edge room is really, really exciting. And I love what they have done at just adding pieces here. Boye Mafe is a really, really good under the radar addition. Boye Mafe in the Super Bowl was really, really good. I loved what he did. There's so much to like about what he can do. And this is another guy that has just consistently gotten better each and every year of his career. Had a 13% pressure rate in 2025. Was like I said, big part of the Seahawks winning the Super Bowl. Boye Mafe is a big, heavy-handed, 260-pound edge rusher that's one of the better run-defending edge stoppers in the NFL. He tackles extremely well, and he doesn't convert pressures to sacks as well as you would like to see. He had just 2 sacks in 2025. He's a guy with a legitimate bull rush. I think he's got power, defends the run. He's going to be a good impact for this team on early downs. I like this addition a lot. I think he's going to be a good piece for this team. You have your first-round pick from last year in Shamar Stewart, who's still here. I'm not ready to call Shamar Stewart a bust after just one season, but I never really liked Shamar Stewart. There was a reason for that. He played in just 8 games for this team. He had just 15 pressures for under 10%, just 1 sack. This is a guy that is a really, really impressive athlete, but that was pretty much all he brought to the table was his athleticism. I didn't think he had a lot of nuance, and he really struggled. He missed 25% of his tackles. He was not good against the run. Maybe he can kind of develop and get better here in year 2 for the Bengals' sake. I'm hoping he can, but they do have some insurance plans. Myles Murphy is fascinating to me because, look, he's kind of been a bust up to this point in his career. He has not lived up to the first round expectations that were set on him. With that said, had the best season of his career in 2025. And I don't think enough people are really talking about Myles Murphy as a potential breakout candidate. He really started to piece some things together down the stretch of the season. Another guy that I think has excellent length, size, power, and down the stretch of the year, again, probably from week 12 onwards, he had 6 pressures and a sack against the Steelers. He had multiple pressures and multiple sacks throughout the rest of that season, and they started every game. He's a pretty solid run defender. He's a guy with incredible athletic tools. If he started to piece some stuff together, and you add Boye Mafe, who I think can impact early downs and be a really good kind of third piece here, or second piece, I should say. And like I feel really confident. I don't believe they picked up Myles Murphy's 5th-year option, so he's playing for a contract as well. I think the arrow's pointing up on him. And on top of it, you draft Cassius Howell in the 2nd round, who was one of my favorite edge rushers in this draft class. I think the way that his hands and feet are mirrored with one another is so rare and special. I think he's going to be a really good pass rusher for this team who doesn't have to play early downs. And I think that's a huge key for him. He's not an early down player. This is a guy that you want to rotate on as a designated pass rusher on 3rd downs because he's got incredibly short arms, but he's got the movement ability, the bend, and athleticism to, I think, really impact games as a pass rusher. Like I said, I don't know if there is a unit that improved more this offseason than the Bengals defensive line. And yes, you lose Trey Hendrickson, who, if we're kind of going off last year, Trey Hendrickson was he didn't play all that much. So it's not that big of a loss in comparison to last year's roster. I love what this team did. I really, really do. And I think this defensive line has the potential to be a top half of the league unit. I really do. But before we kind of finish off with the secondary, where I have a lot more positive things to talk about, we do have to talk about this linebacking room where there are question marks still. They didn't make a single move in the linebacking room. I think the Bengals last year are a litmus test. Never start 2 rookie linebackers again. I don't think any team will ever do it. Demetrius Knight had a okay rookie season. 11 pressures, 4 sacks. He missed 15% of his tackles, which you'd like to see get a little bit better. And I think as the year went on, he started to really get a little bit more comfortable. The coverage aspect was not very good for him. I thought he really struggled in coverage. Had a 115 passer rating when targeted against, allowed almost 80% when targeted. He was a rookie. I think he's got athleticism and can kind of play downhill, be a better run defender, but it wasn't a pretty rookie season. And then Barrett Carter, the other rookie linebacker who this team drafted in the 4th round, he also was really terrible. I mean, the coverage was not there. Another guy that missed around 15% of his tackles. Just a 115 passer rating again. He allowed almost a 90% when targeted. These guys just did not bring anything from a coverage standpoint. They struggled to consistently impact games as, consistent run defenders. But the problem is I don't really think that they've got the depth or pieces to really that you can sub in. I mean, Oren Burks played a little bit for this team last year, and he's a good blitzing, pass rushing type of linebacker. But again, the coverage was terrible for him. They just did not get anything from him in coverage. Maybe it can get better because he played pretty well in coverage in 2024 in Philadelphia, where he saw the field a little bit more, was a decent run defender, plays fast downhill. I don't think there's much there, unfortunately. And then the other guy that you could maybe talk about is Shaka Hayward, who was an undrafted pickup a couple of years ago from Duke. He's been a decent special teamer, but not a guy that I think is going to see a lot of the field defensively. So, yeah, it's probably the worst linebacking room in the league going into the year. Now, there's obviously room for this to get better and be, I don't think it's got top 10 or 15 even potential, but could it be the 25th best linebacking room? Yeah, probably. And that might be enough because you can live with having a bad linebacking crew. You just can't have the worst, and this team did last year. But let's finish this off with the secondary, where I am so excited to talk about this group because they made a couple of moves here that I'm really excited about. We'll talk about the corners first. Dax Hill last year played some good football. I think Dax Hill's been a really weird player to kind of figure out what the plan is for him in his career because to start as a rookie, he didn't play a lot. They kind of moved him all over, played primarily in the slot. His second year, he played safety. They played him about 230 snaps in the box, 600 snaps at free safety. 2024, he played 262 snaps, mostly at outside corner. This year, he played mostly outside corner, but played in the slot, played in the box, and had a good year. He is a really versatile defensive back. I think that's the best way to put it. I don't think he's lived up to the first round hype that he had gotten coming out of Michigan, but you love the versatility he provides. He tackles pretty well for a defensive back, at least he did this year. And in coverage, there are some up and down moments for him. You want to see the ball production be a little bit better, but I don't think he's a complete liability there. He is a good CB2, maybe ideally a CB3. But the player that's most exciting here is DJ Turner. DJ Turner really broke out this year and had one of the best seasons of any corner in the league. I mean, 2 interceptions, 13 pass breakups, allowed 46% when targeted. That is elite territory on 62 targets. This guy was getting targeted and he was not allowing anything. Had the ball production, was not penalized much, just 3 penalties. He was really, really good for this team last year. 4.26 speed. He broke out in a massive way. I don't know if I'm ready to officially call him a top 10 corner, but he is playing in that conversation right now. And I'm really, really excited to see what he can do in year 4 here, where I think he's got some really high upside if he can continue to develop and take those steps. But there are some question marks around the nickel spot, I would say. You've got Jalen Davis, who is here as kind of a nickel defender. He played a little bit for this team. He's kind of bounced around the league. He was okay. I don't think he did anything spectacular. He's not really a great run defending nickel, but made some decent plays in coverage. But the problem is with the nickel spot, I don't really feel like they've got a whole lot of depth here. You've got Josh Newton, who is a good player. I liked him coming out of TCU. He just hasn't been able to give them consistent snaps. Didn't tackle well, and that's going to get you off the field. He missed 35% of his tackles. But in coverage, I actually think he's been pretty good. He's allowed under 60% both years of his career. He has played mostly outside corner. They've got him listed as a slot right now on the depth chart, which is interesting. In terms of other depth corners that you have, you've got DJ Ivey here, who's kind of been here, I think, for a little bit. Not anything spectacular, but he's played 195 snaps in his career. Takario Davis is fascinating as a 4th-round pick or 3rd-round pick. I thought it was an overdraft, but he's got size and is a pretty decent coverage defender. I just don't think he's a very good athlete. So I like the cornerback room. And then the safety room, I love the addition of Brian Cook. I think Brian Cook, look, he's not Jesse Bates. And I think it was a huge mistake that they made letting Jesse Bates walk when they did. But Brian Cook is a really good free safety. I mean, he is awesome in that role. Had 6 pass breakups this year, did not allow very much over the top. He missed 5% of his tackles, which is a very good number. He's still just 26 years old. He's coming back to Cincinnati where he started his career, and he's gotten better each and every year of his career. I think he's a good athlete. He made some good coverage plays. He defends the run really well. There's not a lot of downside to me with Brian Cook. Like, I think he could be a really good piece. You've got Jordan Battle as well, who I still do think Jordan Battle can develop into being a good safety piece here. He started every game for this team last year, had his ups and downs in coverage, but they played him a lot as a free safety, and I just don't think he's got the speed to be a free safety. But he had 4 interceptions, 2 pass breakups. I think playing him around the box where he can defend the run is where he's going to be at his best. That's where he was at Alabama, and he's been a really good run defender throughout his career. He's got 57 run stops, a couple of forced fumbles in there. I like that duo of like a rangy free safety. You've got Brian Cook to do that, and then Jordan Battle to play in the box. The depth isn't awesome. They bring in Kyle Duggar, who I know some people are going to talk about. I don't think enough people have watched Kyle Duggar play football over the last couple of years. He's been very, very bad. I mean, that's putting it generously. There's a reason nobody wanted to trade for him. The Patriots cut him. He goes to Pittsburgh, starts for them, was very bad. He's clearly lost a step and, maybe can play okay around the box. You've got guys like Dijon Anthony's here, Russ Yeast is here, but mostly I think you've just got guys that are going to be practice squad pieces. But this Bengals team is fascinating to me. I think that the defense is very much improved. I absolutely love the moves that this team made on the defensive side of the ball to go out and just not have as bad of a defense as they've had the last couple of years. And I think that that was huge for this team. But they have a pretty favorable schedule. They've got a third place schedule. They get the AFC South and they get the NFC South. So, I mean, you've got 2 of the easiest divisions to play in the league. I'm really high on what this team can do, if you guys can't tell. I really like the moves they made. I think the offense brings such a high floor. And if you can get average defensive play, I think this team's going to be really good. And you look at games that I think are winnable on their schedule. Home against Tampa week 1. Pittsburgh, I think they can beat Pittsburgh twice this year. That's 3 wins right out the gate. Miami, I think you can split with Baltimore. That's 5. I think you beat Atlanta. I think you beat Washington, New Orleans. I think you beat Cleveland twice. I think they're better than the Chiefs. I think they're better than the Panthers, the Colts. I mean, I think this team's really, really good. The question is just going to be like, how many wins can they be, and can this team stay healthy? Ultimately, I'm going to predict that this team goes 12-5 this year. I'm really high on this Bengals team. I love the roster that they have. I think that they have a lot of the right pieces. The coaching staff could hold this team back, and obviously, if there's an injury, it's hard to predict, but I'm really high on the Bengals this year. I think they're going to be one of the most underappreciated teams throughout the summer. But I'd love to hear from you guys. Do you guys think I'm too high or too low on the Bengals entering this year? But that's going to do it for me in this video. Leave a like, subscribe if you are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Adios.